Nino, you there? Can you use your mic ba while you live stream? No.
Yeah, pero ako in mute.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'll just give you the go signal when to live stream. Also you, Joel. All right.
It's streaming na karon.
It's actually streaming? Hi,
Yeah.
what's up? Hello, world. Okay. We'll just
But
start
yeah,
in a
naman.
few minutes. I'm still prepping my side.
Okay, okay.
Gian, I'm gonna present my screen. If will it just take over? How does this work?
Okay, wait lang. I'm gonna end my screen. Blop.
Give me a sec. Let me share my screen. Window, Chrome tab, Python 2. Okay. All right. So let's present. Okay. Is it visible? Yeah. Can you guys see it? Hello.
Yes, kita naman.
All right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's still 8:04. You know what? We'll start early because why not? Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Uh, my name is John Andreap. I'm GDG's data science officer, and I'm gathered here today by our tech department to bring you tutorial for a cause. So this kind of came out of nowhere, no? Uh, it's very unfortunate what happened, right? Typhoon Tino. And we thought that aside from starting our own donation drive and gathering funds that way, we'd start what do you call this? A tutorial marathon of some sorts. As a right now it's being live streamed. Hello world. So that this is our way of giving back since we're all very lucky that we have electricity, and that we've been kept very safe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you can donate, that would be very much appreciated. The QR codes found in the post, and hopefully we'll all learn something from this event. Okay, so who am I? My name's Jay, and I present to you how to Python to Electric Boogaloo. Okay, here's what to expect: a lot of Python, a lot of yapping, and OOP or object-oriented programming. On a more serious note, we're going to have a brief refresher of Python, its syntax and control structures, object-oriented programming, what, why, and how, its core concepts, how it's applied in a language such as Python, Project showcase. Some of my projects that I built a long time ago, way before AI and ChatGPT became a thing or were a thing, right? We're gonna see what code looked like before we had vibe coding or before we had AI powered autocomplete and all that jazz. You can just copy paste and then it just spit out and point out your errors. Very much yeah, looking back it's oh wow, I'm getting sentimental. Okay. After I show you some of my old projects, we're gonna go over Leap Code. What it is and why you do it and why bother. We're gonna have a short problem walkthrough. I hand selected three problems that I really think represent the platform as a whole, and three problems that I think, well, that I really like and that I think you guys will like. Then hopefully, if I don't consume the entire hour, we'll have a short open forum. Here's what to prepare: a computer, a tab or browser open to take notes on Google Docs or a notepad or for leak code, and a brain. Hopefully, you have one. Um, Reminders: this is a crash course. Treat it as watching a YouTube video, but more interactive or like a podcast. Things will progress very quickly. If you get lost, that's completely fine. There will be parts that you might miss or won't understand, and that's all right because we'll be providing the slides afterwards, and there will be a recording for this if you ever want to look back at it, which will most likely be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. I don't know. And then here's another thing. You're it's a lot when it comes to like learning programming. It's a lot to take in sometimes, right? You don't need to understand everything all at once. If there's something that interests you or piques your interest, take note of it, then research more about it later. If there's something you don't understand, take note of it and look into it some other time. What matters is hold on. Hold on. Sorry, my dad came in. What matters is you understand the ideas first, the implementation follows and is honed through practice. The slides will be shared after the tutorial. Feel free to leave at any time, no pressure, no attendance will be taken, and feel free to interrupt at any time by unmuting your mic. Hopefully, this won't last more than an hour. If it does, sorry. Enjoy the ride. Okay, let's have a quick refresher. What is Python? Python is a snake. Charot. Okay, what actually is Python? So, Python is a high-level general-purpose programming language. Its design philosophy emphasizes code readability and uses indentation to replace curly braces that's found in a lot of C-based programming languages like Java, JavaScript, and all that. If you've noticed, its syntax is very akin to just plain old English. It's extremely versatile. Like you can build just about anything with it. So it's open source, interpreted, dynamically typed, asterisk, and it's high level. Learning it opens a lot of career opportunities, and me personally, I use it for work. In other words, it's the GOAT. So we went over this before. We went over this before in the previous tutorial, right? How to get started. You need to install the interpreter first, then you have to install pip, the package manager. You create your first Py file, you start writing, you execute it, and you profit. Woo! Okay, here is the syntax speedrun. So, hello world, variables, very straightforward. Variable name equals its value. You have ints, floats, characters, and strings. Control structures: if, else if, which has been reduced to elif. You have else. You have functions, right? The keyword here that's used is def, and then you're followed by the actual name of the function and the parameters. It's return, while loops, and for loops. So now that we've had a refresher, it's time to move on. Move on. Ready? Ready? Get set. Time to poop. Okay, what is poop? Or OOP rather. OOP stands for Object Oriented Programming. Okay, so what is that? Oh my god. Visual learners. Sorry. So, object oriented programming is a programming paradigm. think of programming paradigms as ways to organize and structure your code. So, crash course on programming paradigms, it's a style of structuring the implementation of a computer program. Right? There are three main, bear with me, popular popular programming paradigms. It's a tongue twister, I know. Popular programming paradigms. So there's procedural, functional, and object oriented. So why do these paradigms exist? So these paradigms were invented by programmers to offer different ways to structure code, depending on what's needed or what problem needs to be solved. Some paradigms are specialized for certain kinds of problems. Some are easier to scale and maintain, while others get the job done straight up. So, what I'm describing above are the top three: functional, OOP, and procedural. So, what sets them apart? In procedural programming, you tell the computer step by step instructions on what to do. In functional programming, you describe what you want done by using functions instead of giving orders. So I think math essentially. And in OOP, instead of steps or pure functions, you think in bundles of data or groups of data called objects that combine functions or methods and variables, attributes. So what does this actually look like in code, right? Here are a few code snippets that I've prepared which showcase this example or that illustrate this example. Let's say we want to get the area of a rectangle. Okay, we're gonna do it in procedural, functional, and object-oriented. Let's look at this example here. In procedural programming, as you can see, we give it step-by-step instructions. We give it the length. So this instruction, create a variable length and assign it the value 5. Create a variable width equals to 3. The result equals area, length and width. So you pass it as arguments and it calls this. Then the functions here are just bundles of instructions or commands, essentially. So very straightforward, very, straightforward. Next up, we have functional programming. So very function centered, right? Centered around functions. So we have a function here, and in order to calculate the area, we use functions. We use map and we use list. So map basically applies the area function to all of the elements within rectangles here, which is a list of tuples. If what is a tuple, think of it as a list, but it's immutable. You can't really change it. Then here you could probably use a lambda function instead of map. That might be something you want to look into. Lambda functions, very interesting. But for the sake of simplicity, here's functional programming. Now, if you wanted to implement this using the object-oriented programming paradigm, it would look something like this. So here, we use this rectangle class as a blueprint, right? And then we create a rectangle object here through a process known as instantiation. Now, what is instantiation? We'll get to that later. But basically, we have a class called rectangle. We have what's called a constructor, which is basically a function that gets called whenever we create an instance of that class or an object here. And then it has its own method, area, which returns the area of the rectangle, which is basically its length times its width. So self.length, self.width are properties, fields. There are lots of names, depending on the language, right? And there's a lot of different languages implement object-oriented very differently. And Python is one of those language where it's a lot easier because they don't really have, it's a lot easier based on my experience. And I'll tell you why later. But for now, this is what it looks like. We'll go into depth on what classes and objects are in a bit. So it is organized. Object-oriented programming is organized around objects. And like I said previously, these objects are instances of classes that have both data variables called attributes. In some cases, they call it properties, and behavior or functions called methods. So, words. Wow. Class, object. What do they mean? So, let's break them down. A class is a user defined data type. If you've ever encountered structs before in programming or in DSA, imagine a struct but with functions. Yeah, imagine a struct but you could add functions to it. Essentially, it has attributes and it has methods. So the attributes here are the members of the struct, and the methods here are basically the functions you can call from that struct. So imagine a class as a blueprint for a house, right? And then imagine the object as the actual house that's built based off of that blueprint, right? So an object is an instance of a class that occupies memory and represents a concrete realization of that structure and behavior, right? Imagine an actual house being built based off of a blueprint. Okay. So how do we actually use a class? Okay. Use a class. Here's an example of how a class is created and an object is instantiated. So I remember I used the term instantiation before, but the formal definition is instantiation is the act of creating an object out of a class. Instances of a class are called objects. So this is a class, this is an object. My house is an object. It was instantiated in this line here, line 11. So, and these instantiated classes are assigned to variables, and its attributes and methods are accessed and manipulated using using this dot. Uh, it the dot if we were taught in prog or DSA that the dot is used to access members of a struct, right? So the dot here is known as the member access operator. So if you've taken like what programming classes or DSA or even OOP, you should be familiar with this already. It's pretty intuitive. Okay. So sometimes classes have what's called a constructor, which is basically the block of code that runs or gets executed whenever you instantiate, whenever you create an object, right? Usually, the constructor is used to instantiate or to initialize an object's attributes here, so that the rest of the class or the rest of the object can have access to it, right? One second. Okay, we're good. So, attributes and fields are basically variables that belong to an object. Right? And methods are basically functions that belong to an object. Okay, so object-oriented programming is centered around four core principles, namely encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. So, what is encapsulation? You protect data by keeping it private and controlling access. Data is accessed and manipulated through the constructor as well as helper methods known as getters and setters. And it's in the name. Getters and setters are basically just methods that either return or set the value of a property, like this. Because it's never good practice to manipulate or to be able to manipulate the properties of a class or of an object directly. Because, say for example, what if, well, usually in this case, right, this is a bank. If you gave anyone who has access to, say, a bank account class the ability to change their balance, of course, that's not really good security wise, right? You'd always want a form of validation, right? In this case, right, what you could do is whenever you deposit, you check if amount is a valid amount. If it's greater than zero, then if you were to build upon this further, you'd add a password or a PIN, then I don't know, the ATM number, something like that. Adding getters and setters basically provide a layer of security that you would not have if you just modified the the property or the attribute directly. By the way, we're gonna use properties and attributes interchangeably here. It really the terms vary across languages, but the main idea is it's, well, property or an attribute. It's part of the class or object. Now, the double underscores here for this property denote a private property. What does private mean? Private means that it can only be accessed within said class, right? Notice how balance isn't accessed or manipulated directly. Rather, it's accessed by using the get balance method, which is a getter, and it's updated slash manipulated by deposit, which is a setter, right? Sets the value, gets the value. Okay. In languages such as Java, C++, okay. Hello? Hello? Oh my goodness. Hello? Hello? Okay. So, all right. So back to the discussion. So it's updated by deposit, which is a setter, right? Getters and setters basically just follow that idea. It doesn't have to be like, oh, if it's a setter, it must set it equal to this all the time, or it should always equal to that. You can perform calculations too, right? If you want to, you can have multiple, what you call this? You can have multiple setters in this case. So say for example, you have one setter, deposit. You build another one called withdraw, which takes in an amount you want to withdraw and checks if it's a valid amount, then it deducts, so on and so forth. So next, inheritance. So inheritance is when you create classes that reuse and extend existing ones. So the extended child classes, quote unquote, inherit the properties and methods of the parent class. Hence the name inheritance. So the child class slash subclass is the class that extends or inherits from another class. While the parent class, also known as a superclass, is the class that gets extended from. Okay, this is a lot of words, but if you look at the code here, it makes a lot more sense, right? You have animal. An animal here can make a sound, some sound, right? And then in the next class, you have dog, which is a kind of animal. So it extends animal. And then what we do here is we replace the method speak with its own method here. So instead of it just making some sound, it makes a sound woof, because that's what the sound that's a dog supposed to make, right? So dog inherits animal. So dog animal. Animal here is the parent class, and dog here is the subclass or the child class. And note that what you call this, many subclasses can inherit from a single class. So you can have a cat class that inherits from animal. You can have mouse inherit from animal as well. And then we replace it. We replace the speak method with something else. We changed its implementation. This changing of the implementation is called method overriding. Another thing you might want to look into as well. Okay. Okay. What is abstraction? Now, this is a bit more difficult to wrap your head around, but bear with me. In our previous tutorial, we spoke about abstraction. And abstraction is the concept of simplifying complex systems by hiding unnecessary details and only exposing essential features and functionalities to the user. Uh, in other words, we simplify things by only showing what's necessary. Abstraction is its own core concept in object-oriented programming. It's not, we don't, yeah, it's its own concept, meaning it has another meaning. Yeah, it has another meaning than just the core idea is the same, where we show what's necessary, but it's applied here in OOP in a very unique way. Please keep in mind that abstraction here is implemented very differently based on the programming language, right? In programming languages such as C Sharp and probably Java, you have a keyword called abstract, right? Which you can just add on to any class, which makes it abstract. But in Python, it's a bit different. We have to use what's called the abstract base class and the abstract method decorator. Okay? What do we mean by this? Okay. So abstraction is the process of hiding complex implementation details and showing extension features. This is implemented through abstract classes that define abstract methods that need to be implemented. Okay, so what do we mean? So I already mentioned this. Some languages uses an abstract keyword, and in C++, the word virtual is used. While some languages like Python don't have an abstract keyword built in, or built-in abstract classes like in JavaScript. So we use the ABC package, abstract base class package, and we use ABC, the abstract base class, which we extend from or which we inherit from whenever we want to make what you call this abstract classes. And for every abstract method we want to use, we decorate it using this abstract method decorator. So what do we mean, or what's the purpose of abstraction, right? Abstraction basically lets us, basically provides us with a way to hide other details. But basically, each of the methods with the abstract method decorator must be implemented in its child classes. Otherwise, it'll throw an error, right? Keep in mind that abstract classes cannot be instantiated. Rather, they need to be inherited from, and its methods be, well, overridden, implemented. Yes. Otherwise, it'll throw an error. Here's another note. You must inherit from ABC in order to use the abstract method decorator. Otherwise, it won't be treated as abstract. So yeah, let's look at this code snippet. ABC, appliance is an abstract class. It can't be instantiated. We inherit, we have two other classes though, fan and light, which implement turn on, which is an abstract method, which means that there won't be an error thrown. So if the fans turn on, it starts spinning. If the light gets turned on, light turns on. We instantiate it inside a list of objects called devices, and we turn it on, and it should spin. It should print whatever's in here. So regarding abstraction, it's become a very big theme when it comes to coding stuff, you know. So from binary, abstracted away, you get assembly. From that, you get C, then Java, then Python, then most recently, prompts. From loaders, we go to assemblers, to compilers, to interpreters, then to LLMs. It's just my observation, by the way. And I remember discussing that at some point, programmers will be programming in straight up human language or English through prompts. Again, despite this, it's very important to learn the fundamentals regardless of the AI tools you have available. Because if something breaks, at least you know how to fix it. There's also the problem solving capability as well as the ability to learn new stuff as tech evolves, which you can only gain by grinding and doing things on your own and not through vibe coding. AI should be a tool and a learning guide, not your replacement. And yeah, it shouldn't be your replacement. Have fun with it, but use it responsibly. Another very interesting observation is thanks to AI, we can worry less about implementation and more about architecture. More on that later and how it ties into OOP. Uh, Polymorphism is the ability for different classes to be treated as the instance of the same parent class, hence the name polymorphism. We've already kind of illustrated this, right? in their previous examples with inheritance and in like abstraction as well. My observation when it comes to the four core concepts is that they kind of overlap with each other a lot, right? In some cases, the more I worked with them, it's kind of a cross between inheritance and abstraction with its own unique twist. In some languages, there's a special keyword called interface used to denote a polymorphic, this is a typo by the way, polymorphic class or a class that implements polymorphism. In this case, cat and dog implement or inherit from animal. So all animals speak differently. Dogs bark, cats meow, and humans say stuff. And what does the fox say? That the point here being a subclass can take on many forms. So again, method overriding, which is when a child class overrides the methods inherited by the parent with its own implementation, which is a concrete way to apply and add polymorphism. So, I know what you're thinking. What's the point of discussing all of this, right? Okay, OOP isn't just some fancy schmancy coding style. It's a way to think about building things that last. When we first learned coding, we throw around functions and variables and function declarations, function calls, variables at problems until it works. Because who cares if it's messy as long as it works? But if we keep programming with that kind of approach, our program, and as our program grows, the setup becomes really, really chaotic and really, really difficult to maintain. Imagine like what? Would you feel secure or would you feel proud of having built an app and having that app all be in one file, right? Like what, 10K lines of code, one file. Surely there's a better way, right? The role object-oriented programming plays here is it gives structure and organization. The concepts we discussed earlier are just rules that help you organize complexity. As you start coding bigger and bigger projects and as you start working, actual work and stuff, you'll begin to understand the importance of clean code. And it's not just enough to get it working. It's just as important to make sure that things look good, right? Okay. Before I move on to that section, another thing is another interesting observation no, about object-oriented programming. You need to view it not as the end goal, like, oh, I'm going to build this program and I'm going to use object-oriented programming. That's not the way to go. Because a concrete example of this would probably be, let's say, React, right? When React, I remember researching about React and how object-oriented programming like started off with it. You can do object-oriented programming in React, right? If you don't know what React is, it's a front-end framework. But like over time, people have preferred not to do that because it's so clunky and disorganized, right? The idea is whatever keeps it more organized and more maintainable, the better, right? Because what ended up happening is what ended up replacing it was like the components ended up becoming more functional than object oriented. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember working with both and I remember preferring the latter. The latter? The former. I don't know. Yeah. So remember, this is just one way to keep your code organized, right? You aren't bound to it. Just remember that it's an option and it's a pretty good option, right? Now, project showcase. So take like what, 5, 15 minutes. I have two projects I'd like to showcase. I will stop sharing my screen so I can start sharing my other projects. Hold on. Uh, these two projects were uh, built way a long time ago. Sorry, long time ago. Window. Let's share this screen. Yes, there we go. One of these two projects, I am very, very proud. Can you see my screen, guys? Let's start with this one. No, let's start with this one. This project is something that I built without using object-oriented programming. This was way before. Is it visible? Can I get a thumbs up? I want to know if it's visible. All right. Hi, Ron. All right. So This was a. Look at this. Spaghetti. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Imagine. This would not fly. Oh my god. Looking at this, oh my god, brings back so many memories, right? It's just when I learned threading, what else? Learned about Tkinter and how to make objects and stuff. I had to port it to Python 3 because I wrote it in Python 2 because I was too stubborn to switch. Anyways, this is what it is. Okay. It is a chat room app which allows you to connect and host. I don't know if, okay, so I recently moved to Linux. I hope this works. All right, let's host. All right. Yikes. This does not look good. Let's do 8080. Password Cisco. Room name Cisco. Then let's host. Eh. Damn. Okay. Obviously, it isn't working right now, but it was working earlier. Real. All right. Let me see if I can debug this. So, something I learned recently is that icon bitmap. Ah, here. Linux does not support .ico. Let's try replacing this with .png. PNG. Okay, PNG. Let's try that again. Okay. All right. Okay. Closed it. Turned it back on. All right. Let's host 8080. Cisco. Cisco, please work. Okay, let's see. Another bitmap error. Logo.png. Maybe single slash will work. Eh. Okay, let's try this one more time. If this doesn't work, I'll probably just move on to the next project or segment. Bam. Okay, there's obviously something wrong. But like, the point is, look at how this organized like code here is, right? So many nested functions within functions and whatnot. This is just main. Then you have server backup. Yeah. You know, in hindsight, no, this would have been so nice if I just turned it into object-oriented programming. But honestly, I didn't know better at the time. So this is what I ended up doing. Then let's go to my other project here, which I tried earlier and it works. And this one actually uses object-oriented programming, right? This one is, hold on, sorting algorithm visualizer that I made because I wasn't very confident in my algorithms and whatnot. As you can see this, clean, mwah, magnificent. Then each algorithm inherits from the base algorithms class, which is just this, right? You have BOGO sort, the goat, BOGO sort, right? You have bubble sort, you have cocktail shaker sort, you have a bunch of other sorting algorithms. Let me run it for you guys. Okay. Oh, yes, Gian.
Hello, I think ni freeze mong screen share.
It is. Oh, damn. Okay. Wait.
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing, then I'll start sharing again.
All right.
Hello, is it visible? Wait, it's not sharing. One moment. technical difficulties. Wait, I'll try leaving then rejoining the meet. By the way, Gian, I'll probably cut my segment short since it's almost 9. Just a heads up. Okay, let's try that again. Entire screen. Okay, let's see. Share the screen. Yikes. I don't think it's letting me share my screen. That's a bit unfortunate. But you guys saw the code, right? You guys saw how organized it was. Let's see here. How about this? I'll send you, Gian, I'll send you a screenshot and I want you to show it to everyone. Right?
Okay.
It's gonna go a cappella here. Screenshot. Go. Window. And take screenshot. Okay. Sending you a few screenshots now. And I just want you to like share the screenshots. Hold on. Okay. Isa, ha? G. Okay. So this is the app that I made. This is what it looks like. And then I'll show you what the code looks like. Selection. Gian, just share your screen so that I can see if you can. Yeah. So that's the app that I made. And you guys saw the previous code before, right? And like how, what you call this? How unorganized it was. So what I did instead for this project was that I had what you call this? So yeah, it can implement a bunch of different algorithms. Okay, a bunch of different algorithms. But sadly, I can't demo it here. But I'm gonna send you another screenshot, and you'll see what I mean when I say object-oriented programming is like one of the best code. All right, here's the second photo. So if you compare, so that's the second photo. Eee. So what I did was, so you see the different algorithms there. What I did was I had a base algorithm class, and I had this was back in 2020, GN. Okay, don't okay. Tell that to me from 2020. Okay, so as you can see, I had it inherit from a main algorithms class, no? And then uh, all I had to change was how the algorithm actually works for the sorting method essentially, right? And then I implemented a bunch of other algorithms there. As you can see, it's a lot cleaner and a lot more concise, right? If I tried making it in one file, it would probably be very messy. Some would say spaghetti, right? Some would say spaghetti. Is there anything else I want to show? Not much, but that's all. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed my segment for object-oriented programming. We have about 15 minutes left. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask. Or if you want, we could just probably move to your segment, Dustin and Gian.
Alright. Sige.
Yay, I'm done.
Sige mo, continue na, me. Is your segment done na, no?
Yay.
Alright. Sige.
Oh, I do have a question.